Let's get out to the Boxer and Gerson guest line and bring on a guest I'm looking forward to chatting with. Television, radio broadcaster for the Kansas City Chiefs, also a color analyst down there for our sister station in KC. Danan Hughes, former wide receiver for the Chiefs. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to next week. It's going to be an exciting time out in the desert, right?
Well, of course, you're very familiar with the first matchup between these two teams, and it's something we've been talking about today. The 4-year anniversary of Super Bowl 54, Kansas City, San Francisco. Obviously, the Chiefs got the better hand of the 49ers in that matchup. But I want to start here. What do you think has changed since they last met in the Super Bowl? First from the Kansas City side and then from San Francisco.
So I think when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs and then Patrick Mahomes, I think the assumption has been that Patrick has been the same quarterback and the success that we've had in 6 straight AFC championships has been the same. But this team has been different. When we got rid of Tyreek Hill via trade, the team changed, and the offense specifically changed, and the defense elevated their game. So I feel like this year, what you see is a more methodical plan of attack on offense as opposed to quick strike like we've been in the past and like we were in Super Bowl 54. And then defensively, you're just seeing more consistent in dominance. They've played. The story for the season and the success of this Chiefs team has been the defense this season, and who would have thought that would be the case when you have Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes? But that's a fact. As far as the Niners, I feel like they're very similar to what they were back at Super Bowl 54. Extremely solid on defense, offense, more capable. They're probably more high-octane on offense than they were back then. When you replace Jimmy G with Brock Purdy, and you have the outside guys that are making big plays, and you have McCaffrey in the backfield. Probably the addition of McCaffrey opens that door for them to be a stronger offensive force than they were back in 54. So you got a top-shelf offense with George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and Deebo and Brandon going against a top-shelf defense for the Chiefs. And then the offense for the Chiefs going against an extremely solid defense, especially that front seven. So it should be a formidable matchup.
Yeah, I can't wait. D, I was telling my co-host, when you guys had that home game against the Raiders and the receivers were letting Mahomes and Andy down, just the team down, I kind of put you guys in the coffin. I was like, you know what? Something's off. It's just not their year. Rice comes back, that great win against Baltimore and Buffalo. But over here, the Niners defensively didn't have their 2 best games, one against Green Bay, as you saw, and last week against Detroit. Do you think Andy and Patrick are feeling some sense of confidence coming into this game that they can do something against this Niner defense?
You know what? Even though we were winning the game, we won the games against the Bills and the Ravens, we didn't play top-shelf offense. So I don't think that what maybe has lacked on the Niners side has increased in any confidence level on the Chiefs offense. This season for the Chiefs has been totally about us. You can make an argument that the Chiefs team could have ended the season 15-2 without, if it would just been 4 drops, 4 specific drops by wide receivers. Like, not that a game comes down to one play, but technically, if you look back, there are 4 games that came down to one play, and those were drops by our receiver. So we have been kind of up and down, inconsistent. So I don't think just because we've played much better in the postseason this year and gotten tough wins on the road that's any kind of incentive for extra positivity. They realize that we have a tall task at hand, and we got to this place differently than we have in the past. But I don't think just because you guys have given up a lot of points or more points than you're accustomed to, that opens the door for us to have any extra confidence.
Former Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver and now current television radio broadcaster for the Chiefs, Danan Hughes, joining us on the Boxer and Gerson guest line here on 95.7 The Game. You mentioned Mahomes specifically, and in terms of the offense, when you were watching him this season, I know he's coming off an MVP campaign, obviously defending champs. To me, I'm not sure I saw the same Mahomes this year than even I did last year. Do you think that's just a case of the drops like you were talking about and not having as much help on the outside, or do you think it's because Mahomes has taken a little bit of a step back as a quarterback?
I think what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes is maturity and an evolution more as a complete quarterback and more so as a leader. And the reason why I say that is I think there'll be listeners out there that say, well, he's won 2 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs. He's been to 6 straight AFC championships. Like, how much better can he get? Well, he got better this year, more so on the leadership side and understanding the dynamic of not having to make the play all the time. And that's what maybe he's done in the past, and he's been successful. But as the season started moving forward and some of those inefficiencies happened on offense, you started to see kind of a shift in Patrick Mahomes where instead of forcing the ball downfield, making the big wow plays downfield like we've seen in the past, he was just going to take what the defense gave him. And if it meant running the ball more like we've seen in the postseason, he hasn't checked out of those plays. There's a lot of plays that are run-pass options, and he's sticking with the run, going with the safe, shallow crosses and 5- and 10-yard routes, and moving the ball down the field, taking up a lot of the clock, not throwing the ball in jeopardy positions, not putting his receivers out there in jeopardizing positions. So I feel like Patrick Mahomes this year and last year recognized something specific about this offense and was able to make crucial adjustments. Last year, after we lose Tyreek Hill and we got Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, what did he say? We're going to be just as efficient. He specifically said this, but we're going to look different. Everybody thought he was crazy. We just lost one of the top playmakers in the game via trade in Tyreek Hill. What do you mean? And then lo and behold, we go and win a Super Bowl by basically throwing the ball to 10, 11 guys a game. This year, just the same way. Rashee Rice, a rookie, comes in and assumes a number 1 role as the wide receiving threat on this team. And what does he do? Adjust his game to expose defenses with Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce more. So it's just a maturation process. So impressive for Patrick Mahomes.
It is, Danan, and you got me in my feelings now because when you talk about Mahomes, he's so great. I was with my partner watching last year's Super Bowl, and I said, is Mahomes actually going to win this on one wheel? You know, he's got one good wheel, and he got it done. But I want to ask you about the defense in Spagnuolo. Are you shocked that the defense took the steps that they have this year? Because I am. I didn't know they had it to this degree. Speak to us about his job and the defense for the Kansas City Chiefs going into this game.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was shocked because I don't think I'm ever shocked with what the Chiefs organization has done. But I will say there were some surprises. You wondered how the young talent from last year, especially with the immediate success that Trent McDuffie had, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, Nick Bolton was in his second year. George Karlaftis was a first-round pick. You wondered, okay, well, what would that sophomore season look like? These are still young guys outside of Chris Jones on this defense. What is that going to look like? So with the injuries that we saw last year with L'Jarius Sneed, the injury earlier in the season to Trent McDuffie last year, you just kind of wondered. But I don't think surprise is the way I would say it. But then as this season moved forward, and you saw the physicality by the defensive backs. Normally, and I'd probably make this argument with the San Francisco 49ers, their defensive backs are really good based on the front 4 and the front 7 and their dominance. You can make an argument that the Chiefs' defensive backfield is really good because the defensive backfield is really good and the front 4 and front 7 are making their noise based on the defensive backfield and how long quarterbacks are having to hold on to the ball and how they're not comfortable throwing the ball downfield because our DBs are all over the place. So I think it's 2 different dynamics of success, and it's really good to see a defense be dominant when you have such a great quarterback.
Joining us on the Boxer and Gerson guest line, Danan Hughes, television radio broadcaster, Kansas City Chiefs color analyst, also played wide receiver for the Chiefs. back in the day. Danan, I want to talk to you about the head coach matchup in this, because you've had the chance to play for someone like Marty Schottenheimer, who I think gets unfairly associated with coming up short. Kyle Shanahan kind of is in that category right now here in the Bay, because he's done some great things, 3 of the last 4 years, NFC Championship games and beyond, but he hasn't got the big one. And now I know that Andy Reid stood in his way in 2019, but do you look at Kyle Shanahan as someone that can't get it done, or he's just ran into, in various situations, greatness in front of him? How do you break down the head coaching matchup in this big game?
You know what? I think what you see from Kyle Shanahan is maybe a younger version of Andy Reid. Like, you think about the success that Andy Reid had with the Eagles and winning the NFC and going to NFC championships, winning the NFC East consistently with Donovan McNabb, and then coming up short and then having his one opportunity and ultimately going against Bill Belichick. Like, that's the 1 year he made it to the Super Bowl, and he had to go up against Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest greatest coach in history, and winded up losing. He didn't have that postseason extreme success until he came over to the Chiefs. That's kind of similar to what Kyle has faced in his career, having that success to the limit and then ultimately getting into a position where you're facing one of the other great coaches of all time. So I feel like his time will come. Hopefully it doesn't come this weekend and it doesn't come against the Chiefs in the future. But, I mean, he's such an absolutely great offensive mind. He comes from a great lineage. Obviously, he's been around success, whether it was with the Denver Broncos back in the day when I played and now with the Niners. His time will come. I think you got a great thing out there with Kyle Shanahan. He identifies with the players extremely well. And from a Chiefs perspective, we just hope that success doesn't happen in next week.
No, awesome. I got to be transparent with you, Danan, because when Christian McCaffrey came here and had the impact on the Niners offense, I was telling people out here, and I wasn't being negative. I was like, you know what? The Deebo-centric offense that we were accustomed to under Garoppolo is somehow Deebo wasn't retained. This Niner offense could afford to lose his services. Then they had the 3-game losing streak, and it just hit me like, how dare I, not hate, but miss out on what Deebo means to Brock Purdy pre-snap, the stress he puts on defenses, and the fact that you played football and seen a lot. Can you speak to just how what I want to call it rare, or how unique Deebo Samuel is as a football player and how Kyle uses him?
Well, it's amazing. I mean, he's such an amazing talent. And when you consider the success of the Niners when he's on the field, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, and Brock Purdy, I mean, it tells you about how complete a unit they are. But with Deebo, with his running ability, his pass-catching ability, his speed, and his tackle-breaking ability, like those 4 things to have as a wide receiver or a slash guy are phenomenal for any offense and headaches for any defense. And doesn't matter how good we're playing, doesn't matter if you were playing the 2000 Ravens, they would break the huddle and everybody would look to see where Deebo Samuel was, because he has that kind of impact on the game. And to your first part of your point, I think that when you talk about what they could have missed and what maybe they don't need, I think it speaks more to how we should, as fans, appreciate the level of greatness that we're seeing and the level of athleticism that we're seeing on both sides. Like, you think about the Detroit Lions and what they were able to accomplish with Amon St. Brown. You got, their quarterback situation, the storyline behind them, and then you guys and the young talent for the Green Bay Packers, not having a receiver or a tight end with more than 2 years of experience and able to have their kind of success on the field. And then obviously on our side, what we see from Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and now Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Like, this is a window of time where there's some great football and great players like Deebo and others that we should just be able to relish, get some popcorn and watch and enjoy.
Well, we're definitely going to have our popcorn out on Super Bowl Sunday coming up next week. But, Danan, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you taking us behind, at least here in the Bay, enemy lines. But we're looking forward to a great game, and we appreciate your time.
I appreciate you guys having me.